Hi guys, it's Mrs. Millison. I wanted to give you a quick little lesson on how to use your T-table, okay? Just in case your calculator is not working or you don't have a calculator to use for the AP test, I want you to be able to use the tables. I've already put a link to this table in Google Classroom for you, okay? And this is on one of the formula sheets that you get for the AP test. Okay, so the only time you're going to need to use this table is when you're doing either a 1 sample or 2 sample t-test. Okay, this won't come up in any other thing at this point. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about, so I'm going to use the example from the last worksheet that you guys did about the fish laying eggs in the different caves in the secure and the risky caves. We ended up with a t-test statistic of 4.600. Okay, I forget what the sample sizes were. I think the 2 sample sizes were 10 caves and 9 caves, right? Okay, because for our t-table, if we look at our t-table, we need 2 things. We need the degree of freedom, and then we need our test statistic, okay? And then these are our p-values. You're not going to find exact p-values, you're going to find the ranges, okay? So you should be able to figure out within the range whether it's going to be greater than or less than 0.05 alpha, okay? So what I have to do is, this side is your degree of freedom, and inside the guts is your test statistic. So my degree of freedom here would conservatively be the lowest, sample size -1, excuse me. So I have to look on a degree of freedom of 8, and then I need to look for 4.600 in the guts of the table, okay? So if I look at a degree of freedom of 8, and then 4.6. Now 4.6 is between these two. Whoops, can you say between these two? So my p-value is going to be between these two. That's pretty darn small, okay? So my p-value is going to be between 0.0005 and 0.001, okay? I don't know the exact p-value. I mean, I could in my calculator, but again, we're going to pretend we don't have our calculator. But I can assess this against an alpha of 0.05. Clearly, any of these p-values will be less than 0.05. So I know that my p is low and I can reject the ho, and I have evidence for the ha. Okay? Let me run this in the calculator just to double check. We'll do our TCDF, and again, assuming you don't have the calculator. Now, of course, for my curve, my 4.6 would have been over here. And a gazillion. My degree of freedom is 8. And I get a very small p-value of 0.0008, which indeed is between those 2 numbers. Okay? All right, let's do a couple more. So let's say we do a 1 sample t-test with my ho that mu equals 15, my ha that mu is less than 15. So I would have my table, I would have my curve here with 15 as my mean, and then I would want to find this probability that it's less than 15, or less than 15, which is whatever my sample is. I don't care. There's my alpha. It's a 1-tail test. My sample size is 50. So I know my degree of freedom is 49. Now on my table, though, I don't have 49, so I got to go to 40, right? I got to use a degree of freedom of 40. So I'm going to look at 40 on the table, and then I'm going to look for 2.641 in the guts. Ignore the negative, okay? Ignore the negative. So on line 40, I got to look for 2.641. So that's going to be between these 2 numbers, which means my p-value is going to be between these 2 numbers. Still pretty small, 0.005 and 0.01. 0.005 and 0.01, okay? Now again, this is a 1-tail test, so I don't need to double anything. This p-value, whatever it is, it's going to be less than alpha. So again, I would know that I could reject the ho. Okay, let me run this just to see what the p-value would be. And then I'm going to stop doing this. Let's see. 2.641. Did it the wrong way. 2.641. And I know I'm doing it the opposite. I just want my p-value to be... Anyway, I want it to be positive. What was my degree of freedom? Okay, so indeed, that number is within that range. Okay? All right, let's do a 2-tail test. So this is going to be a two-tail where my ho is equal and my ha is not equal. All right. Sample size is 35, so I know my degree of freedom is 34, but I look on my table and I don't have 34, so I've got to use 30. So I'm going to look for 30. I'm going to look on the 30 line, the degree of freedom line, and then I'm going to look for 3.149 in the guts of the table. So let's see, 30, 3.149. So that's between these two numbers, which means my p-value is between these two numbers, okay, 0.001 and 0.0025. Now, this is a two-tailed test, which means I have to double those, okay, so 0.002 and 0.0, what is that, 5, right? So again, still pretty low. My p-value, my alpha of 0.05 would still be true, that any p-value in that range would still be less than alpha, so I could still reject the ho and have evidence for the ha, okay? All right, let's do some practice, okay? So if you guys want to try this one, I have a ho and a ha. This is a two-tailed test. There's my alpha, there's my sample size, and there's my t-test statistic. If you want to stop and then turn it back on and check it, sounds good to me. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the curve. I always like to draw the curve. Okay, I know this is two-tail test, plus it reminds me that it's two-tail, so I'm going to have to double my p-value. In my table, my degree of freedom is 17, and I do believe I have that in my table. Good. So I'm going to look for 2.368 in my guts in my table. So I'm going to go along the 17 line and look for, what was it, 2.3. Okay, so it's going to be between these two. So my p-value will be between 0.01 and 0.02. Now, since this is a two-tailed test, I got to double these p-values. Okay, now they're still small. Even if it's the highest at 0.04, it's still going to be less than 0.05. Okay, so I know my p will be less than alpha, so my p is low. I can reject the ho, and I have evidence for the ha. Okay, all right, second one to try. This is a one-tailed test. Go ahead and try it and turn the video back on. Okay, of course I'm going to draw my curve because that's what I do. So this is greater, so this is going to be over here. I know my degree of freedom is 14, so I believe in my table I have a 14 line, and I do. And I'm just going to look up 1.270 in the guts of the table. So 14, 1.270. Okay, so I'm over here between these two numbers. So my p-value is going to be between 0.1 and 0.15. Okay, it's not two-tailed, so I don't have to double it. But clearly, any p-value between basically 10% and 15% is going to be greater. Okay, so I know that is not going to be true. So in this case, I know my p-value is too big. So I'm going to fail to reject the ho, and I don't have evidence for the ha. Okay? All right, a couple more. All right, go ahead and try this one. Turn the video back on and check. Okay, I'm going to draw my curve again. So 165, this one's less. Okay, so again, it's another one tail. Sample size is 130. So I know my degree of freedom was 129. I know I don't have that on my table. My degree of freedoms don't go that high. So I'm going to have to use the 100, right? So in my table, if I go to a degree of freedom of 100 and look for 2.916, let's see what that's going to give me. So 102 what was it, 916? So I'm between those two numbers, which means I'm between these two p-values. Write those down. Too many zeros, I can't remember. Okay, I don't need to double it because it's only one tail. And clearly, those p-values are very small. P will be less than alpha of 0.05. So in this case, my p is low. I can reject the ho, and I have evidence for the ha. Okay? All right, let's do one more. So go ahead and try that one, and then turn the video back on, and I'll go over. Okay, I'm going to draw the curve. Let's see, 12.4, and then this is less. My sample size is 100, so I know my degree of freedom is 99. However, I don't have 99, so I've got to use 80 on my table. So I'll go degree of freedom of 80. And again, my t statistic is negative, but I'm going to ignore the negative. Okay, so I'm just going to go to look for 1.481 on the 80 line. So on the 80 line, what was it, 1.481? So it's between these two, which means my p-value is between 5 and 10%. This is one tail. Now, what's going to happen here? Because my p-value, it's going to be equal to, it's not going to be less, okay? This one will not be true, okay? Any p-value here, 0.056, or 0.06, 0.07, 0.08, they're all going to be greater than 0.05, okay? So we can safely say that my p is not less than alpha, okay? So I'm going to fail to reject the HO, and I don't have evidence for the HA in this case, okay? So again, the t table, you'll only have to use it when you are doing a 1-sample or 2-sample t-test once you find your t-test statistic. Of course, you only need to use this if you can't use your calculator. Okay, I hope this was helpful. Message me if you have any kind of questions. Okay, see ya.